Crypto holders and permabulls get punished again, altcoins keep getting destroyed, ETH BTC in a major bullish level, and Tether dominance in a major bearish level, aka a bullish level for the rest of the market. You're in a weekly breaker block in supply. What all of this means for the market in today's episode. Let's go. Okay guys, let's start with BTC here right away. For all of you that haven't watched the BTC higher timeframe plan video, make sure to check it out because I charted BTC according to premium and discount and supply and demand. And what we are seeing here are mainly refined levels and trade setups, but the higher timeframe plan is completely mapped out for me in this one video. I'm gonna link it above in the little card. We continue going lower. We have taken out this low, which is confirming the bearish market structure once again. I'm very happy with my short. I obviously took a stop loss on Doge here. From this level, I re-entered with the profits, took the stop loss, nothing to worry. It was a hedge for my major short here. And as I said before, everything I take here, and as I said in my BTC higher timeframe plan, everything I take here is in higher timeframe premium. And so this is how I see it. And that's why the size on those longs was lower than on, for example, the short, because the short is way more optimal up here in high premium and extreme higher timeframe premium, all-time high. And now we are entering maybe discount again, because here's the 0.5. This is our sand in the line. This is where longs getting attractive again. And this is also where I'm going to TP big on my short, at least 30%. I've even set up a limit TP for this take profit, simply because I don't want to miss it out and see an aggressive bounce and being too late, being asleep or whatever. And I maybe even TP some more, but before I do that, I want to see how the level reacts. And I probably, instead of TPing more on the short, I probably take a long on BTC here. Even though I think this could be a counter trend bounce, the size will not be immense or huge or whatever, but it will be considerable and it should again act as hedge to my major short from the top. And I do that mainly because Tether dominance enters supply here. We have the refined weekly breaker block, but overall, I want to be on the buy side, crypto assets in this general area. So I could mark this out, this whole thing here out as supply. And this is higher time frame premium of this whole range. So if we treat this whole thing here now as a range, because we exceeded this previous small range here, so I could basically remove that and could put the key up here. And the whole chart needs some updates as well anyway, because this is now here and the 0.5 of this swing so also keeps remaining important. This can be removed. I've also closed the weekly above this one. No key area anymore. So now we exited this local range, even though it's a higher time frame range, you can consider it a local range. And we opened up a new major higher time frame range. I exclude the wicks here for this. And now you see, if we go up here, we are in premium of this range, and this led to an aggressive reaction. This was basically the start of the bull run in 2023 when everything went ballistic. When we had this short period of alt season, everybody was waiting for again and again and again. It really happened here. The big broad sell-off of Tether dominance for the, let's say, the smaller caps and the newer projects, the ones people look actually at, because we had alt season for ETH as well here. And if you were in from down here, it was an incredible run. But for the majority, most people are only holding those low caps, promises, and those kind of things. And these really performed in 2023 so well. And so the whole high caps, mid caps, low caps, nano caps kind of crap that everybody's sharing, the liquidity cycle thing that played out once before in 2020. And everybody's still hoping and waiting for it. No, in 2021, I mean. it hasn't really played that way, and it probably won't until people stop looking for it. And we had something similar here, so not really. Actually, it was just high caps, low caps, and the mid caps did not really get affected. I mean, it was in general a really narrative-based kind of cycle where you had Solana performing well, but ETH really bad. Then you had ETH really well, Solana not that great. So it was not that simple, high caps, mid caps, low caps. It was way more complicated and not what people expect. This is like the key takeaway. It's never what the majority expects because it would be too easy. So look for the consensus and do the opposite is the best way you can act in this market. So back to Tether dominance, we are in this supply. Right now we hit the weekly breaker block. So somebody might say, okay, I want to long this already. For me, I personally, I still hesitate right now a little bit. Why? Because BTC is still hovering around this key low. I mean, we could argue this is a double bottom, but for me and for my edge, I want to wait until this is swept, to be honest. And we also look at ETH, it's hovering around this key level. I mean, it's still in demand here. So we could argue, okay, it's in demand, that's already enough. And hey, we might get a bounce from here and I'm not exposed on the long side, but that's okay. That's okay for me. I want to see some more signs, some signs of strength, not buying into the falling knife. Maybe allocating myself a little bit in spot. But as said before, I'm not expecting a huge bull run from this level. I rather expect some kind of counter trend bounce. And we had this one already. And if you look at the previous cycle, we had one counter trend bounce in the bear market and then we rolled over. Maybe this time we're gonna have something else. Maybe we have this small counter trend bounce and another one here, even a bigger one. Who knows? And I want to be prepared for that. But I rather wait for those refined levels, especially for leveraged longs. I don't blindly buy into here because the RR is horrible. I want to buy a leveraged long here. And I could think about adding some spot exposure simply because ETH BTC is in the level and we have confluence. It's not like we are not there yet. We are actually there, or we are very, very close. I think this week will resolve a lot of uncertainty here because we are sitting at this weekly breaker block in discount for ETH BTC. But I mean, the level's wide, right? We could also fill this FVG. So if I would want to go long here on ETH, I should probably do it like that, covering the FVG, maybe even like this, targeting this high. That needs an update, obviously. This has already been taken. Let me know, guys, if you appreciate this, if I do this live, or should I prepare all my charts and then just show them? But I think there's actually some value in doing this live, because then you see how I update my charts and how I treat my charts. And probably best to, come on, give me the fib here. Yeah, so we could play it like that. We could also play it like that, but then the RR gets pretty unfavorable. So if I would play ETH BTC, which I don't, but it's for to showcase how we trade those majors, right? I will show you the same thing on Terra Dominance as well. You see, I would go long ETH like this, targeting this high, TP at the 0.5 at this big supply area, and only if we break out, we can target this then. And hey, there's maybe a case where this happens, but for now I'm trading the range as usual, and it's already a solid 4 to 5 hour up here. And so there's a case to be made to scale into ETH, for example, here. But as said, I'm expecting a broader correction also for the US stock market, and right now we start bleeding into the week already. And so I want to see how this all of this resolves, and I risk not getting my perfect refined entries, but I still can add some spot, and there is no pressure because bottoms usually also take some time to form. So it's not like that we hit such areas and then immediately rip. So V-shapes are very, very rare. And if you look at this on a weekly, it's basically a V-shape from this low, but still we hit this area. Let's say we had this as the whole area, and we had 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. So it's not like I need to enter now and I will never get my entry. Obviously, if it starts bouncing from here, we might think, oh no, we missed it. And the most important thing is that you don't chase, because as I said, usually bottoms take time to form. And if you want to get some exposure, then it's probably wise to start scaling in very, very slowly. I'm holding my powder dry for a little longer, willing to wait for some signs of strength. And the same story here on tether dominance. We hit the weekly breaker block. And now if I would want to get some exposure, the question is, do I really want to enter like that? Because this is like very, very tight. And you can play like that, definitely. On leverage longs, it might be even wise to do that, to play it like that. Or like that maybe, targeting the range lows would be reasonable, even though I think it's probably better to TP big here in this area. But overall, the question is always it's always a question of what do you want? Do you want to have like solid exposure and less headache? Then just buy spot, and then your invalidation might even be up here above this supply. And it's not that sexy, it's just 3R. I mean, you get paid 3 times as much for winning, for being right, than for being wrong. People think 3R is bad, but the reality is most traders would probably lick their fingers for a solid 3R trade. And your spot plays should be like that. Wide invalidation, no over management, no micromanagement, just accepting that you won't nail, or that you don't need to nail the perfect bottom on the dot. That's not important in this case. It's the same like here. If you sold here, perfect. If you bought here, perfect. If you bought here, perfect. If you sold here, perfect. It's not about nailing the wick high here. It's about getting exposure here. And if you did that in September, August of 2024, if you remember, November of 2024 and December was beautiful, also for altcoins. And so, yeah, make sure that you don't over refine. And if you think you're ready, and if you think you can refine and you can play those tight high R setups, because the reality is the higher you are, usually the lower your win rate. And that's why I always recommend play on lower R and aim for a higher win rate. Why? Because as beginner or even as intermediate, it's about being able to execute your edge, being able to hold on to your strategy. And this is way easier if you simply aim for a higher win rate. Because if you play a 50 win rate plus, trading is actually fun. But if you play 7 or even 12, 10R setups, being RR greedy without even knowing what you're doing, it's gonna be painful, because if you play on a 30 or 25% win rate, you lose 7 out of 10 times, and nobody likes losing. And most of the time people fuck it all up because they can't handle the losses. And so play spot wide, for example. So get some exposure in this area. Make sure your invalidation is wide. If you want to do that, scale in. Don't go blindly all in now, but scale in. The further we go into the level, the more you buy. And if you have the time, if you have the knowledge, the experience, the nerves, you can try to add leveraged longs. Obviously, they should be on a little lower risk overall, because they're tighter, which makes them more risky, but the reward is also way higher. And so, for example, on ETH, my goal is to get a long here, probably covering all of this. As you know, if you follow me for a while, as you know, I'm usually entering once the level is here and not trying to predict where the price will reverse beforehand. And I would, for example, target then the supply and maybe here the 0.5. So this would be the first target. And you see how good the R already is. For me, it's not, leverage longs are not looking like that. For me, a leverage long would look like that, covering this FVG, maybe even this swing low here, because there's nothing lost doing that. And this would be a solid 5R trade. And also 2K key level, remember that. So we lose the key level maybe here. People get very bearish because ETH is losing 2K, even though it doesn't mean anything, but people getting bearish because of losing of a round number. If this is happening, this would be a beautiful leverage long. But if I want to get some spot exposure, because for example, I think ETH is ripping 80% or something, or 70, I can simply scale in here and have a clear invalidation based on majors. Maybe the invalidation should even look like that, even though this is not a setup I would personally trade. But many people who still work a job, have a family, don't have the time, don't have the experience, and oftentimes get stopped out because of over-refinement and over-perfection, because they think the reversal needs to happen from this exact spot. They might wake up with a rude awakening, because if you look at, for example, the BTC key level, and if you remember that, how many people said we need to take this level before we can reverse? Bullshit. We front ran it and then we ripped 70%. And so allocating yourself within this area makes perfect sense. You don't need to have the perfect hit of this level. Price can do whatever it wants, because if too many people were waiting for that and too many people short into this move, they will just simply push price higher regardless of have we taken this or not. This is important stuff. We don't have to do anything. This is a market, so it will always just do whatever harms the most amount of participants. And you need to figure this out, and you can expose yourself without over perfection, without thinking something needs to happen because of your fancy level or something. No, expose yourself around those levels. And if you remember, if you follow me for longer, I was exposed 80% into altcoins and some longs here. And people called me crazy. People said, oh no, we need to take this and blah, blah, blah. Yet we didn't. We didn't, we never did. And the solution to that was actually on the BTC Euro. And I shared this chart as well. And you see here, perfect reaction. The funny thing is that looking back, you will always find some kind of solution and some kind of perfect level and some kind of reason why things happen, and then you say, oh man, I missed it, I'm so stupid, why didn't I look at that or look at that? The reality is the market has so many layers of complexity, and I mean so many layers of complexity that it doesn't really matter how much information you take into account, it's still probabilities, because you can't just include every single possible solution or reason beforehand. Because, for example, there is Euro, GBP, Swiss franc, whatever, all kinds of currencies for BTC here on so many different exchanges. And it's all looking a bit different. Sometimes even on some exchanges, this level hasn't been taken on the Euro. And it's always easy to look back and say, yeah, of course, it was the Euro. And so now we know, blah, blah, the next time we do that again. But if you studied the Euro, or if you followed this chart on the Euro, it did not always work perfectly that way. And so it's still probabilities, guys. And it doesn't really matter how much information you take into account. It's actually the more information you take into account, if it's too much, it will actually lead to paralysis. And that's also not helpful. So make sure you have a higher time frame plan based on like layers or an amount of complexity that does not paralyze you, really. So that said, back to ETH. This is what my leverage long would look like. Losing this low, losing 2K, making people bearish would be my entry. And it's a similar story here on the BTC dollar chart. No, this one. I'm TPing on my short, definitely. And once we hit this level, I probably enter a long to hedge my short, because I want to keep as much of the short as I can for simple reasons. First reason, I get paid funding fees. Second reason, this is always a good hedge, because if my main thesis plays and we enter a real bear market here, like, I mean, not like counter trend bounces and blah, but really going for those lower levels here, so 40s, 30s, 20s or something, I want to hold this short. And the funny thing is, if I take this long here, it's way easier to hold on to this long. It's way easier to hold on to the short, because I'm short, I'm long, I can extract money on both sides. If we get the bounce, nice. If we drop lower, nice. So this is what I want, comforting my mental game, being able to handle all possible outcomes. And if we hit this level, and if we continue being in the supply up here, and maybe even take this level, and maybe even take the rest of this level, and we get this confluence of ETH and BTC and Doge, and we are not losing this one here, I want to also have some altcoin exposure. And I probably base my whole idea on on those majors. And for example, Doge is looking fine. Once those majors are hit, I probably just buy some spot Doge and aiming for the 0.5 here, because let's imagine Doge loses this low somewhere from this area. There's a big upside potential. And I also had a look at ADA, for example, from down here, from the extreme range low. And I'm not looking for any refined levels here. It's just extreme premium, like multi-year, sorry guys, extreme discount, multi-year discount. And should we get a bounce into something like that, the percentage performance is already significant. And counter trend bounces usually happen very fast, take people off guard. And so those plays could turn out to be very, very beautiful. We're losing the wick right now, but based on majors, I will want to get some exposure in this area. And when I say spot, if you saw my post about leverage, when I say spot, I don't necessarily mean spot only, but rather low leveraged longs. First of all, read my post if you don't know the whole thesis or strategy I'm using there. But in general, leveraged longs don't need to be at 20x, 50x, 100x leverage. They can also be open with 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x leverage, depending on how wide your stop loss is. This already makes you able to use less margin. And then once the position is in profit, you can move your stop loss into profit, or at break even, you can crank up the leverage to an absurd amount, and then you can remove the margin. And this is, for example, exactly what I did on this BTC short here. This is looking so crazy because the short is at 150x, but obviously I did not open this short at 150x leverage. So this is, by the way, not updated, but I'm still in this position, and now it's looking even more absurd because it's at 10,000% gain. But this doesn't mean anything. I just cranked up the leverage and I removed my margin, and I can use this margin now to open longs while being in the short. You see how nice that is, and how it minimizes my exchange exposure, or I get hacked because it's some crappy blockchain exposure, you know. It's all about risk management in the end, and leverage is a tool to risk management and margin decreasement. So this is the higher time frame plan right now. I'm waiting for this level still. I'm waiting for this ETH level still. And should I get some signs of strength, or see some signs that this already starts to top or to bottom here, I might want to get some slight spot exposure through low leveraged longs. But overall, for those positions, I'm definitely patient. I'm waiting for them because I think we're so close. I would be surprised if we not sweep this low. But hey, I've been surprised before. I expected that we take 100K that once we are so close. We didn't, probably too many people waiting for that. But that's why I prepare for every single outcome. It's not like I have one idea and I go 100% on this one idea. That's not how it works. And that's why I always preach, be diversified, have plans for several outcomes. The game will be much easier and more fun. This video is a little longer than usual, but I think we covered everything and the whole plan pretty precisely in detail right now. And turbulent times like that require a little more time and a little more analysis. That said, guys, I'm gonna update all of my positions live in the free Discord anyway. Have a great week. Bye.